any second now, we will be joined by, indeed, here he is. Hello, Ian. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Ian. Right, we are live. We are now live.
Oh, good Lord.
Well, hello to everybody on Facebook, and hello to Ian. Yes,
Hi there, Beverly.
Hello. Well, these chats tend to be a little bit strange, Ian, because I ask really annoying questions like, what were you like as a child, Ian? What was your earliest memory?
Perfect. No, I was, a bit of a wild child, but I was smart, so I didn't get into trouble much. But my two cousins who lived just down the road from me, I was always getting them in trouble. You know, it's like a dog that barks, woof, and then all the other dogs bark. And when the owner comes in, all the other dogs get into trouble, but the one that barks is sitting there. No, I'm perfect.
So you were a rabble rouser. So tell me about where you grew up and what mum and dad were like, and brothers and sisters. Describe your home life.
Well, I was very lucky. I grew up in a farm cottage. So my grandparents owned the farm, and my parents and my uncle and auntie lived in adjoining cottages down the road. And you know, so it's like a long lane with the odd cottage here and there, nice old 400-year-old, you know, lovely red brick cottages. And I, as a child, spent, I was on my own a lot because my brother was much older and my sister a little older, but of course, soon she turned a teenager, she wasn't interested in a younger brother. So I was left to my own devices, and every day I would get the dogs, my dad's Springer, my grandfather's Lab, and my uncle's Jack Russell, and I would just roam the fields. And I would, generally, I was very responsible, but I did get into mischief. Like one day I dammed up the drainage ditch and we flooded a field and stuff like that.
Oh dear.
But my uncle was very good, and he said, "Oh, you like, you know, playing in ditches?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, let me teach you how to dig fence post holes." And so he says, you don't just dig it, you dig a little hole and pour water on it and come back the next day, and then it's easy. And so I was actually doing little things like that at an early age.
So whereabouts were you growing up? Because
Hertfordshire.
Right.
Yeah, we're actually 22 miles exactly from Marble Arch up the A5. And then you get a bridge and you can see where the farm is now, because the original farm, the building still stands, but it's a new part of the new town of Hemel Hempstead.
Oh.
And we still have half the fields left, but it's radically, it's really changed.
Yes. So when you were, was anyone else in your family a vet? I mean, how did you end up? Because
no, my mother was a farmer's daughter, and my dad was born into a nursery, quite a large nursery in Hemel Hempstead, and then he became a clerk of the works, so he worked for the air ministry. But they were very much country folk. And right from an early age, I mean, I can't remember my like very young childhood like some people. I guess I start remembering being with the dogs when I was about 5, and the chickens and the cows and everything. But I can remember that it was decided I should be a veterinarian because that would help out on the farm to have a resident veterinarian.
yes.
And I just went along with that at school. Studied all the things to become a vet, went to the Royal Veterinary College, and then about halfway through, I thought, I don't want to be a vet because I just couldn't see being stuck in one place.
Right.
And if you got a vet clinic, you've got to do that. And so I thought either I have to be like a peripatetic vet roaming the world, or academics. And so I got into research. I developed a fascination for behavior and dogs very early on. And I was reading stuff like Socialization in Dogs, Michael Fox's early stuff, and then the wonderful Diamond and Rosenzweig studies about early experience changing brain anatomy. Fascinated me, and a lot of the stuff I read was all at Berkeley. And so I thought, I know, I'll do a PhD at Berkeley. And I wrote to these people, Dr. Beach, Marion Diamond, and joined these studies. And for 10 years, I just watched dogs. That's what we did. We had a 2-hour working day starting at 9, and crack a beer, sit and watch dogs mate or chew bones together, social hierarchies, development of aggression, mating behavior. It was just a wonderful 10 years, just watching dogs and counting the numbers. And this is the big difference. It's not like a lot of research, when you're researching personality and cognition. Behavior is wonderful because it's observable and quantifiable. And so we churned out numbers. So we're always talking fact. Yes. And as I say, behavior can never lie because you can see it. Yeah. And for the most part, I don't care about the motives, why the dog did this. What I'm first concerned about, unless it's fear-based, of course, but usually it's not. And so let's just change the behavior. So the owner's happy, the dog's happy.
How did you, it was a big leap, wasn't it, going from Hertfordshire to California?
Well, I was in London for 5 years in the 60s. London. No, it was no leap at all. London in the 60s was glorious. Now, that was a leap, but it actually happened before I got to London, about 62, 63. The world turned from gray to colors and music. And it's like everyone was dressed in a gray suit with a shirt and tie and wearing a hat, and all the cars were black, and everyone saved. And then 62, 63, it changed, and we spent money, we partied, there were discos everywhere, and we wore colorful clothes and music and other stuff as well. It was, so no, then when I finished at the Royal Veterinary College, it was very easy to select Berkeley because, how do you follow London in the 60s? Well, it had to be California in the 70s. And quite by chance, I found Berkeley, and all the studies I was interested in and then later took part in were at Berkeley.
And how did you fund this PhD? Because I sound like a lot of years.
It was really funny. When I was at vet college, I had long hair, and I used to wear army surplus bell bottoms that I would dye lime green or canary yellow. And I was kind of different from about 90% of the vet students who wore tweed jackets and a Biella shirt and a college tie. And some of the professors, I think, had a little disdain for me, and a couple really didn't like me. And I actually had a lot of trouble escaping the vet college, and I failed my finals and had to stay on and retake them. It was kind of like a rite of passage. I was staying at Hawkshead House, the field station, which was like a country club. There's a pool, a croquet lawn, a racquetball court. So I had to do this 3 extra months. But again, I met these professors, and one of them was just vitriolic. And if it weren't for the external examiner from Dublin, I wouldn't have passed. He would have failed me. But the external examiner said no. And I'll name him. Well, I won't. He was a professor. And he said, no, professor. He answered the question. And he was red and bulging. And so he then said to me, Dunbar, should you qualify, what are you going to do next? I said, well, actually, I've been accepted in the PhD program at Berkeley. And the rage in his eye, I thought he was going to come across the table and kill me. He really hated me. You know, there's two professors there were. And then he said, and how are you going to finance this? I said, well, actually, they're offering me employment as a research assistant, and I couldn't resist telling him how much, because I knew it was more than he was earning as a full professor.
Wow.
I mean, they offered me, which to me was a fortune back then, in the late 60s, early 70s. The wage difference was enormous. Well, that was the time of the brain drain. Everyone was leaving England to work in the States. And so Dr. Beach, who had an enormous grant because he was so famous, they have 7 levels of professor in the state of California universities, and he was at level 8 when they employed him.
Wow.
And when he applied for a grant, he just says, I want the grant, and he'd get $1 million back then. So we had a lot of money, and I was employed as actually a research specialist. I was one of 2 of them. He was one, I was the other, which meant we didn't have to teach. But ironically, we both loved teaching, and so we both did teach. And so early on, I taught courses, animal behavior course. Then I taught a course in human sexuality, because our research, the main thrust of our research was about sexual differentiation, how male and female, in our case, dogs, develop differently in terms of anatomy, physiology, and behavior. So we gave this course, and it was the most enrolled course ever. Okay. Hundreds and hundreds of students. And it was fun. It was fascinating stuff. So I was actually surprisingly well off here once I got my paycheck. But the first 3 months, because the money hadn't come through yet, and I ate lettuce sandwiches for 3 months, because you could only take 300 pounds out of England back then.
Oh my goodness.
That was all. Well, it disappeared in one day, for the first and last month's rent on an apartment, buying sheets, pots and pans and stuff like that. So 3 months, it's pretty austere. But then my salary kicked in, and a pretty famous anthropologist, Shirley Strum, who studied the baboons in the Gombe, she said, how would you like to house sit? I said, what does that mean? She said, well, there are these people who are going to the Olduvai Gorge, to eventually dig up Lucy, and they have a house, and they have a Malamute and a cat. And they kind of like the idea of a veterinarian staying in their house. I said, for how long? And they said, well, they'll be gone for 6 months. So I then discovered this, and through them, I got all these wonderful house sitting gigs. So I lived in beautiful houses in the hills. I had a great salary. It was the 70s in California. Everybody, all my friends from England and around the world would visit me, Now, of course, no one visits, they all got bored with it. But so it was a really enjoyable 10 years of my life, watching dogs, this time not as a 5-year-old boy, but as a scientist, counting the numbers. And a lot of what we came up with, we use now in puppy classes and to explain complicated stuff like rage syndrome and Springer's, or it's quite obvious to me what's happening because of the research I did.
And when you left England, really, no one was, behaviorism or whatever it is called, dog psychologists, they didn't exist in that era, did they?
No, it's
and that was about it.
I got interested in behavior in 67, when I realized I didn't want to be a practicing veterinarian. I wanted to get into academics. I took this 1-year special honors degree with the top 4 students from every medical school in London and the vet college. So it was a real high-powered degree, and the people teaching us were the best of the best. Like my external examiner was Andrew Huxley, you know, quite a famous name.
Mhm.
And we had 1 week where we could research any topic that we liked. And back then, all research, there was no Google. It was all done in library stacks, looking at medical indexes and what have you. And I'd come across 2 research studies, one by Michael Fox, socialization, and one on behavior altering brain anatomy, brain histology, if you like. And so that's what I researched,
Mhm.
early development in puppies.
Mhm.
And I got interested in that. And so I went to the professors at college and I said, you know, the whole demographics of the vet profession is it's changing. When I applied, either your dad um, either had to be a veterinarian or a
Yes.
farmer. Um, and without that, you didn't stand a chance of getting in.
Mhm.
And I said, when I came in the final year, there was one woman.
Right.
I'm now getting ready to leave, and the incoming year is 87% women from towns. And I said, they don't know what we used to know. I grew up with animals, and I just have animal savvy with, you know, by the time I was 5, I had an 80 cow recall and a 200 chicken recall. This stuff was easy, all off leash, of course. Didn't put leashes on chickens and jerk them. Come along, do it like this. It was just call them and they all come running, you know? And so I said, I think we have to teach behavior.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, they really had disdain for me just because the way I looked and dressed. And they conferred, said, okay, Dunbar, why don't you go off and research fish behavior and chicken behavior? And so I did. And the fish behavior was very interested. I found contacts in Singapore who I subsequently visited. It was a veterinarian who trained his koi, and he really impressed me. But it was the chicken behavior that led me into this group called what was it called? Applied Animal Ethology. And it was a European organization of
Mhm.
veterinarians interested in ethology of farm animals. So it was
Right.
cow behaviorists, and or I should say ethologists, chicken ethologists, pig. And of course, it
Mhm.
was all about production. Now, there was only one member interested in dogs. That was, oh dear, um, Anders Hallgren. I think
Right.
he's very old now. He's still alive. I did communicate with him fairly recently, and he was interested in dogs. And as a student, I was the second. So I got in as their first veterinary student. When I moved to the States, I realized that the Society of Veterinary Ethology, this European group, had 12 US members. So I wrote to them all and said, hey, we should start our own group.
Yeah.
And a couple of them did, Kathy Haupt, and I think it was Bonnie Beaver and Ben Hart. And it became called the American Society of Veterinary Ethology. It's now renamed the American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior. So I was very instrumental getting behavior going in vets. But then, of course, I started giving lectures to doggy clubs right away.
Yeah.
So I introduced behavior to dog trainers, then to shelters. I did a lot of, started the first shelter behavior program in 83, San Francisco. And then when I started to write for the American Kennel Club Gazette, and
Mhm.
this is how we eventually met, I started their behavior column. And in the column, I said, the time has come for a new field of pet dog training. I
Mhm.
said, because what's offered to them is basically kennel club training, which was competition. You know, 1 minute sit stay, a 3-minute down stay. You can't praise your dog, a recall, on leash healing, off leash healing. I said, they want to praise their dog, you know, and the syllabus is greater than just manners. It's every single behavior and temperament problem you can think of. And so I proposed this field of pet dog training and
Mhm.
then created it, of course, with the various APDTs. But then you read one of these articles and said, hey, you know, can we republish them in the Kennel Gazette?
No, it was actually my boss,
The
Charlie, who
yeah.
recruited you, which was very rare because he wasn't actually interested in dogs. So he must have found your article very interesting indeed, because he for him it was the worst job in the world being the editor of the Kennel Gazette. He regarded that being a downgrade from when he was a bin man. Yeah, he preferred cats, and it was not his favorite job in the world. But your articles were the ones that he really was excited at, and I was, when I first started proofreading the Kennel Gazette, I was absolutely blown away. I think you did an article on how to teach your dog not to come back and how to teach your dog not to sit. And
Oh,
I can still remember them. I mean, that was the thing.
yeah.
It was just wow, you know. And the first time I met you, you had come over to have lunch with my boss, Major General Sinnott.
Yeah, I remember him well. Yes.
Was somebody who wasn't at all interested in dogs.
Yeah.
You were all excited, thinking, oh well, because in those days it was very, very Victorian, and they didn't regard the general public as being customers. They were those annoying people who phoned up all the time. So
Yeah.
you had a lovely lunch with somebody who basically couldn't really understand why he was having lunch with you, and you came in and Charlie said, let's go to the pub, I think probably because that was his solution to everything. But we loved your articles, and I think I became your disciple, because it was almost like a religious experience. And I remember you gave me a serious puppy training video with your fantastic Hawaiian shirts.
With fantastic what?
Hawaiian shirts.
Oh,
were just
the green one, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I remember watching this, and it was like a conversion, a sudden moment of, I want to find a puppy now to try and do all these things with. And yet I'd spent my whole life with dogs, and I'd never thought of using a little bit of food as a lure to make a dog sit and lie down. It was like magic being just in front of you. So everywhere I went, I told people about your video, and I started giving them away. It just wasn't terribly good for business, I suspect.
Yeah.
It was good for your business because I had to keep buying videos. But it was a very big step, this serious puppy training idea, this idea of playing and learning and it being fun and people not being richly humiliated when they go to dog training. It was actually enjoyable. This was extraordinary. I mean, how did you come up with this concept?
Well, that was the old way. I mean, when you read books about dogs written in the 1800s or even 1700s, you will see the equivalent of off-leash puppy training using food lures, food rewards, praising lots, and so on and so on. And it was largely, I would say, Conrad Moh's book in the early 1900s. I thought it was 1903, but I was reading 1910. Just I checked it yesterday. Anyway, it changed dog training because this was, police dogs, military dogs, so it's on leash, regimented, repetitive obedience drills. And his book was rewritten, 200,000 times? It was always the same book, I mean, how else can you explain? Ignore your dog till he's 6 months to a year old, then put a leash on him, tell him what to do, issue a command, and jerk him when he doesn't do it. I mean, that was essentially the book. But then obedience competitions took off. And so we then had obedience clubs. And of course, that was the only place that owners could go with the dog to have it trained. And so it wasn't that what I came up with was so miraculous. That was the normal way that I grew up with. It's the way my grandfather trained all the farm animals. I mean, my great-grandfather won an off-leash, a reinless, one-horse straight furrow plowing contest. So his horse is trained to take commands and pull the plow in a straight line. My dad trained his gun dogs that way, food lures, food rewards. So I was lucky that this thin stream of country folk still knew the old way, which had pretty much been abolished in most of the states. in big cities, and all we were left with was this on-leash technique. So it wasn't a case of what I came up with was so fantastic. That was what was normal, but it was the fact that dog training was so bad back
Yes.
then. It's
Yeah.
as if someone said, now, I've got a very difficult task for you. I want you to take something that should be thoroughly enjoyable, training a puppy. And I want you to make it a horrendous experience for people. And they did it, which reminds me now of the article, the article I wrote, how it was entitled, How to Teach a Dog Not to Come When Called. And it was my first and last attempt at a humorous article using sarcasm. So, what I wrote in this was, it was a joke. I said, if you want to teach your dog not to come when called, then let him off leash, ignore him, and wait until he's really preoccupied, and then ask him to come, but don't ask him nicely. Scream at him, come here, you son of a female dog. Should he still come, then run at him screaming, about time, like this, and grab him and roll him over. Anyway, I got a letter after this article from a gentleman. And he said, Dr. Dunbar, I love your articles in the American Kennel Gazette, especially your last, How to Teach a Dog Not to Come When Called. However, I tried it and it didn't work. And to this day, it gets wild. I have wondered whether he misunderstood the title and he thought this was How to Teach a Dog to Come When Called, and he tried it and it didn't work. Or that he was really trying to teach the dog not to come when called, and it didn't work. The dog still came when called. And I should have written back to him. It's bugged me all those years, but from then on, I do not use humor when I'm writing an article. I may say a few things a little jocular, but no sarcasm, no innuendo, because it really shocked me. But that was the story of that article. And then I should be interviewing you too. First you were proofreader and then disciple, as you say, but then you became my editor, right?
Yes. But
yes.
I did start booking you for events. So I think I got you to talk at a bearded collie club.
Yeah.
And it was extraordinary because it was not many people who've got bearded collies, but it sold out. We had millions of bearded collie people in a room, and I still, people still talk about it. They've never done anything like it since.
You put on some enormous seminars for me back then, and I remember one. You got so angry with me. It was in somewhere like Maidenhead or Basingstoke. Anyway. And it was entitled An Evening with Dr. Ian Dunbar. And so when I got there, being me, I thought, well, there's no mention of topic. Do you remember? And I started talking about no money down, real estate. And then, oh, that's not the topic, cows. So I started talking about cows.
And this went on you're going
quite
to do
a while.
Again tonight.
No one said anything in the first break. You were furious. It's the only time I've seen you angry. And I said, it's a joke, Beverly. Come on.
Oh, nobody complained. It's true. They loved learning about cows. And it was a relatable.
Cow behaviour is really important.
And I think you've actually done that several times, because every time after that, you would always start off with cows.
That was just to bug you. Now I know I could get a rise out of you, then I would always try it. Yeah.
But I'd never organised anything like that before, and that's, I think I did feel like I was a disciple, because I was saying, oh no, I must get people together, because this is really exciting. This is a new movement, and it was like a change was happening where people were, because what you just said actually resonated, that the old way of doing things, we seem to be much more in tune with our animals, and we lived with them, and we didn't, well, we've gone from living sustainably with farm animals to treating them like things, not animals. And the same seemed to have happened a bit with dogs, that dogs became, I don't know, not our friend. And it's now the stage where a dog now is definitely part of the family, whereas back then dogs were called Spot and Fido and were more considered, well, there to help us, not
Yeah,
necessarily
well,
live
yeah,
with
pet
us.
ownership is surprisingly young. I
Yeah,
mean, for the average Joe, I mean, obviously, if you were Queen of England, you had a few Pekingese or something, you know. Now, of course, corgis and doggies and what have you. Um, but pet ownership is surprisingly new because, of course, back then, food, you ate it. You
yes,
didn't have enough food to feed a dog as well. And
mhm,
pet food is quite a new thing.
yes,
Um, and I think, I mean, I see big changes. And back then, it was a revolution and it was a delightful one to be in. But to me, it crested in the 90s.
mm,
And now I think we're coming back downhill again
mm,
because, um, yeah, I think that dog training is now a better place for dogs and for people. But the effectiveness of dog training has just gone down the toilet in the past decade, decade and a half. And I think we've kind of lost the plot, and people will talk about the theory of training in lieu of actually training the dog. And if you think about it, if you go to a professional dog training conference, how many speakers do you see actually training a dog on stage or showing videos of them training a dog? No, they talk about it. And now dog trainers talk about it in class to the general public and talk about, no, you're in the wrong quadrant, or you've got to be totally positive.
mm,
And whereas my view is, I think first you've got to train the dog.
mm,
Then we look at, it's to a certain prescribed criterion, then we judge how quickly we train the dog to that criterion, because speed is very important
yes,
for two reasons. The owner wants it quick and easy. And if not, they may not do it. They may
mm,
not have the patience. But also, if the dog is suffering, and if he's not trained, he is. It
mm,
could be a fear-based problem, he's suffering, or it could be he's just barking or not sitting, and the owners get frustrated with him. And that's a bad relationship, to live in a house where everyone's frustrated with you, and then we get learned helplessness. So to me, the criterion is important, and speed to criterion is also important. Then I will evaluate the ease of the program, because
mm,
it's got to be quick and easy for the owner. So if
yeah,
it's not easy, they probably can't do it. They're not a dog trainer. They don't have the experience and expertise.
mm,
If it's not quick, they probably won't do it. And then we look at, is it enjoyable?
yes,
Whereas I think now people are doing it the other way around and saying, no, that's not totally positive. You shouldn't do that. But they aren't actually doing it themselves either.
no,
Like classical conditioning is the best example. Dogs scared of people, dogs scared of the environment, dogs scared of other dogs. They just talk about it, talk about it, talk about it, talk about having to be totally positive, but the damn dog is still in agony. It gets me so angry they haven't trained the dog.
mm,
My view is we're going to do a one session turnaround for this dog reactive dog. In one session, he's going to walk out a different dog that can now play with dogs. And yeah, you know what? It's going to be a little stressful for him at moments. It's going to be stressful for me, and it's going to be stressful for onlookers. But I've
right,
trained the dog. And when I think back about education, there were some parts about it that were really stressful. The two professors that hated me, I laughed at it, but
mm,
that wasn't right. My German master, who terrified the living crap out of me, that
mm,
wasn't right. You know, stress is not fun, but you know, there is stress in life. But
mm,
if the stress changes the dog's confidence level and quality of life within 1 hour, I would say it's worthwhile doing it. So I think we got it back to front now. We
mm,
argue about what is fair, what is good, what is totally positive, but we aren't training the dog.
That's very interesting, because I must admit I had sort of, even though I've spent a lot of time around dog trainers and dog behaviorists, I would never consider myself an expert. But I now find that it's even more easy to get into trouble saying the wrong thing, because there is a rule book of what you're allowed to say and what you aren't allowed to say. And there's a, it's become a very narrow a narrow thing, and that people are either good or they're bad, and they're either in the right camp or the wrong camp. And we seem to spend an enormous amount of time trying to find out who are the good people, whereas there must be a way of seeing the good in the good trainers and just grouping them all together, or because there seems to be endless fights within factions as to what is the correct way to do things. And it's not clear from the general public's perspective. How do you know who's right? I mean,
You know, it's very funny when you say that. When the revolution started, like beginning of the 70s, getting better in the 80s, then it exploded with once we had the video, because that went round the world. And then in the early 90s, I started the APDTs, first in Canada, later in the US, then in Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and Europe and France, the MFEC and stuff like this. You know, I was instrumental at getting these educational dog training groups. Before it started in England, it ground to a halt. I won't go into the politics of it. I won't mention any names, but at the time there were 7 dog training groups. And so I arranged, as I did in all these other countries, 2 conferences, one a small one, and then one a huge one. So the small one in England was just 8 speakers one day, a conference. And 2 of the speakers were from the States. I was paying to bring them over. The whole conference was boycotted.
Great.
All of the speakers were informed they weren't allowed to speak. I mean, this was this whole partisan approach in England. I'm part of the group and you aren't. You know, the revolution stopped before it started. And so the growth, what you've experienced in the UK, has been much more gradual than the explosion we had in the US, in Canada, and Japan, and Australia. It's like all of a sudden, here's this new thing. And because we started open educational groups, anyone can come to a member of the APDT and come to the conferences, because who do you want to come? The people who don't agree with you. The first thing they did in England was, well, I'll tell you the story, you know, was one person decided, I had 700 names of UK dog trainers who wanted the APDT. And when the flack started, I said, I don't want to mess with UK, you do it. Here's the 700 names, okay? They thinned it down to 70.
Whoa.
Yep, of which 7 decided, well, I'm not having someone say that these, you know, 630 people can't be members, so I don't want to be a member of this organization. And it took, I think, 10 to 15 years before they built up to the 700 names that I gave them back in 1992, because they were exclusionary before they started to include people, because they wanted to make money on it. They wanted membership, paid membership. No. You make money on the conference. You know, there are conferences, when I was in charge of the APDT conferences in the US, each one netted $500,000.
Wow.
It grossed about getting on to $1 million. We had 1,500 people at a conference, all paying, you know, $550 each for a 5-day conference. Do the math, you know, adds up. Plus there's all these add-ons. And they missed the plot. You can make money out of education too, but it should be open to all.
Yes.
You know, I'm going to do a bozo game today. I'm actually writing now about how to teach 30 dogs to shush at the same time. This is something I did back in the 80s, but then I'm going to play a bozo game. And a bozo game is, and the unsolvable bozo question, I'll give it, but not the solution, was solved by a US trainer, a UK trainer, his name, I can't remember his name now. He's in that ASPCA training, but what's his name? Oh, this is horrible when I forget names. Anyway, the question was, you're teaching a puppy class, and in comes the guy with the 4-month-old Labrador puppy. Zoom, he's shocking it. Zoom, you've got to solve the problem. So the bozo game is, you have to stop me doing something that you strongly disagree with, or is reprehensible or cruel or whatever, but you have to do it in a way that doesn't demean me or insult me, Otherwise, you've lost the opportunity to train that puppy.
Yes.
So if you demean people, if you shout at them, you know, we have avenues. If you think what he's doing is inhumane, report him. Animal control or police in the US. You know, similar sort of thing in the UK. Report him if what he's doing is inhumane. If what he's doing is legal, which back then shock collars were legal, they still are legal in the US, then no, he's just doing something you find offensive. But do you want to train his puppy? So, and the whole point about Bozo, if you ever say to him, then you shouldn't have got a puppy in the first place. Everyone goes, Bozo, Bozo, because you, of a dog trainer, have lost a puppy.
Yes.
And so I always think about this when I'm talking to owners. I don't want to lose the puppy. That's why I'm going to be as really polite and as sneaky as possible with you, trying to seduce you over to seeing it my way. And if I'm talking to a dog trainer, I could lose 3,000 puppies with one insult. You are not totally positive. Join another tribe, as a famous dog trainer says. You're in the wrong tribe. Get out of here. You know, because you shout at the dog, or you grab the dog, or you jerk it, or use a spike collar or a shock collar, you know, what have you. No, if you want to help out the dogs, you've actually got to be nice to people who don't see it your way and are doing some pretty dumb stuff because they don't know any better, or dog trainers are doing some pretty dumb stuff because they don't know how much quicker, easier, and more effective reward-based training is when done right. Because it's not being done right at the moment. Everyone's bribing now. We've gone back to, you know, the criticisms I had during the revolution. I don't want to bribe my dog. I said, no, let's define a lure, a reward, a bribe, and a distraction. But we're going to use food for all four of them. And for three of them, they're very useful in training, especially as a distraction. Look, food on the table, you're off leash over here with me. Or where's the dog? Looking at the table. Of course you got to train it. Come here and sit. You know, so we use food as a lure to teach the meaning of words. We use food as a reward because most people couldn't praise a moribund cabbage. You know, they just can't. About damn time. Thank you. They can't be sweet. They can't be loving. They can't dance. They can't hug and pet and be joyful. You know, we have to teach them that. They soon will. Every man in my class will be a driveling fool and they will be dancing because I'll be leading them, you know, and as a distraction to teach the dog, no, respond to me, not to that. So, you know, I find it very upsetting that people are so judgmental, but now I think it's blinded us to what we're meant to be doing, which is training, which is what? It's changing the frequency of behaviors and putting that frequency change on verbal cue. That to me is how I would define training, and which means you have to quantify to have proof of training. You test the dog. Look, his longest sit stay was half a second. Then we train him, and an hour later, look, he's doing a 1 minute, 15-second sit stay now. Wow, you've trained the dog. This is missing from dog training, proof of training. And so people just talk about it.
Yes.
And it's really funny when I look at the people who actually do train the dogs at conferences. A number of them have stayed at my house, like Chirag Patel. You'll see him on stage training a dog. Yes. Why? Because when he stayed at my house, here's your dog, train it. Yeah. I remember once we gave him a really difficult dog that eventually, because we were thinking of adopting it, but we decided we couldn't because it was just not friendly with cats. And I see a lot of the UK trainers, when I see videos of them doing it, I think, oh yeah, she's good friends with Kelly, you know, and so on and so on. But it's a big influence that I have forced them, like I do with owners. I say, right, leashes off, let the class begin. It's mayhem. That's the whole point. So you can train the dog within this mayhem, so you then end up with a dog that's trained. with mayhem surrounding you. Anyway, I should be quiet. I do talk so much. I'm not going to say another word. I'm going to respond now to a series of questions.
Okay, all right.
Succinctly.
I'm going to rewind a little there. You mentioned lovely Chirag. Do you remember when you came over to the Wag and Bone show, which is we created a weird, the first ever in England, a dog show for normal people with pets.
It was miraculous. Of course, I remember it.
It was.
I mean, not only did you put on great seminars, which were huge, you put on events which were, and I can say this, the best events I've ever been to in my life. They were so much fun. Anyway, yes, I remember.
It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I mean, you came all the way from America, and I don't know if you know this, I don't know if Chirag has mentioned it, but young Chirag was 14 when we did the Wag and Bone show. I mean, it's embarrassing, isn't it? We feel very old. But we had a tent called, I think we called it the Shrink Think Tank, where there was people talking in the tent. And Chirag just stayed in that tent all day when he was 14 and listened to you, Ian. And he became what he became. I mean, if he hadn't as a child got himself to that event and heard you, his life would have been completely different. You excited him about the concept of dog behaviour. And he then went and studied hard and he went off to the Royal Veterinary College. He's such a clever chap, isn't he, Chirag? But he's a lovely human being. And I think that's the thing, is that you can't be a dog trainer if you don't like people.
No.
And there's an awful lot of people who do it because they don't like people. They only like dogs. And that's what I've always understood is your philosophy isn't just about the animals. It's about the whole world. And it's all about positivity and encouraging and shaping people to be the best they can be. Because I've known you train people, like our sponsor for that event was the lovely Spillers, and the boss there was Mary,
yeah.
Or she was called Mary something else first. I can't remember what her name was in those days. But you trained her, and she told me this. This is a nice big, really, she's now in Zurich. She's really still very high up in Purina. You taught her about the importance of punctuality. Did you know that? You trained this executive. She said, I was always late for meetings until Ian took me to one side and explained that I really created this terrible impression and that people, so, I'm always on time now. Now, I don't know if you do that, but you little ripples where you use just an observation, and we need people like you in charge of things because you actually like people. And you want people to succeed, and that's the thing, is that I think we're getting into a very selfish society where people want to get ahead, but they don't put the hand up and to say, "Come, follow."
Yeah, I think the second way you described it is much more accurate. I really want people to succeed, no matter who they are. To say I like people is kind of like when you say he likes budgerigars or something. No.
Oh, you're frozen. Are you still there?
Don't like, but I will still work with them and teach them how to train their dog. Pardon? Oh, did I freeze?
You did. You're back again, but it's a bit, yes, we'll keep going.
If we have any more problems, I'll pick up the computer and run to a different location. It's usually about this time. I think it's lunch hour. Everyone suddenly uses their computer, and in this site it dropped, but I can go inside. And so if I freeze again, wave your hand, like do this or something, and then I'll just pick up my computer and move. I do love training people, and if I don't like someone, and some people do rub me on edge if they're abrupt, if they're a naysayer or what have you. So I couldn't say I really like them, but I find it an immense challenge to teach them how to train their dog, and it gives me great pleasure to see them succeed in it. and that we are people trainers, and there's so many dog trainers. You used to say, well, I don't really like people, so I became a dog trainer. And I think, well, you'll be good at doing board and train, but you won't be good at doing individual consults or teaching people, because you have to have, it's like being on the board of directors. You need governance. No, you have to speak for the betterment of this group, not for yourself. So you have to forget who you are for a moment and say, well, I think that would be a bad decision. I personally would do that, but it would be bad for this group. And that's a big difference. And so you have to work with a lot of people you may not like for the dog. And I always visualize the dog. What I do is I kneel down, I pet the dog, and I put my head on its forehead and pretend I'm communing with it. But I instantly bond to that dog, and now I want to help it. And that can make me put up with all sorts of rubbish from people. Now I bonded with the dog. And I mean, I like to be funny, but I am strict. I don't tolerate tardiness, as you say. Every lecture I start is the same way. It starts on the 2nd of 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. And they say, but there's a few more people coming. I said, then they'll miss the start. And I said, and that's really important, because if I delayed starting when I have 120 people in the room, that's a slap in the face of all of you. So I want to reward you by starting. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to tell you a little joke. Here it is. And I'm going to refer to this joke at 9:30. And when I do, I want you all to crack up laughing and say, oh, that is so funny, And then I say, oh, sorry for those of you. That was a joke I told right when we started. What is it? What is it? That's history now, So, but also I don't tolerate lack of compliance. I will modulate what I suggest you do based on your dog's point of view, your point of view, where you live, how you live, who you live with. But when I say, now we have to do this, it must be done. And what I tell them is, I say, when I bonded with your dog, I just can't stand to see people who don't follow through, and the dog suffers. Okay, I can't stand to see it when I bonded with the dog. Okay. So here's the deal: when I come back, I'm going to ask your dog, did you do the homework? If the dog says you didn't, then I'm out of here. You're going to have to find another trainer. So I go through this little routine with them. I get them to cry. But no, when I give you homework to do, I want you to do 100 come sits. I want you to do it in the kitchen. That's how the dog eats dinner. I'm not having you get angry at the dog because you won't come in the dog park when you won't do the very foundations of a recall in your kitchen, then in your dining room, then in your yard, So I am a stickler about compliance, and I do have a compliance clause, and it lays it out all nicely. I said, I'm very lenient. I'm very adaptable. I'll design a training program for you that takes into account your point of view and the dog's point of view. But when I've designed what I think is the best thing to do, it must be done. Otherwise, I'm out of here. And I say, you can't buy me. No amount of money. And when I have a list of people I've turned down and you would be gobsmacked. These are seriously rich people who have offered to fly me in a private jet to, the Middle East or South America. Sorry, I'm not going to do it because you can't follow the simplest instructions I just gave you via email and asked you to video back. Anyway, sorry, here am I talking again.
No, I like the segue. Right, so let's go back a little bit, because you became a dad at some point. What sort of dad were you? I mean,
I don't know what happened.
Yeah. And you did a course on that as well. You taught people. So what sort of, because I remember some of the things you used to say about And later when I became a mum, I kept thinking, well, that's the way Ian said, you've got to do this. And it's, you had a code where Jamie had to be good if it was something really, really important, but it meant you're going to have fun later. And it was like a secret language you had. Do you remember?
It was a secret hand signal, which to this day only Jamie and myself know. And I used it with him, I think, once, and he used it with me twice. And what it means is, I'm so upset now. I'm close to tears, or I'm so urgent. I'm so worried. Please do what I say now. I'll explain it afterwards. We'll have fun afterwards. And that's, you know, what I explained to him. And when he used it with me twice, I was totally shocked. And I'll tell you one occurrence. We were in France skiing with a veterinary ski group, the Sierra Veterinary Medical Association, a big, happy, family-based group. And Jamie came with me. He was probably about 11 or 12 then. And we're having dinner. And I'm taking, you know, me 20 people out to dinner and what have you. And we're laughing and having fun. And I look at Jamie and he's very quiet. And I sort of, and he gives me this hand signal. I can't believe it. So I get up and say, excuse me, everybody. I say, come on, Jimmy, let's go outside. What is it? He bursts into tears. And we're trying to get someone to speak when they say, and he can't get the words out. I said, look, take a deep breath and hold it. Okay, Daddy's here. It's all right. Hold it in. I'm going to count to 5. 1, 2, So now he stopped crying and said, what's wrong? And he said, you said yesterday that Daddy and Jamie, and he'd always talk about himself in the third person when he was upset. You said yesterday Daddy and Jamie were going to go out to dinner, just the two of us, and we were going to chat, and there's all these people here. And I'm like, oh God, no, it started just Jamie and I. Then I saw a friend and invited them, and then they had friends, and now it's like 20 odd people. I said, I'm so sorry. All right, I promise tomorrow night it's just Daddy and Jamie, okay? And I'm almost close to crying now when I retell the story. I had no idea I was upsetting him. I thought we were having a great time, But now he's a dad. That makes me a grandpa. And when I look, it's like, I don't want a gravestone, but if I had a gravestone, I would like to have on it, he took part in creating an incredible dad. I think myself and Mimi, Jamie's mum, together, we raised a father who is like very few other fathers I've seen in terms of how he interacts with his kids, other children, people in general. It's magic. And that to me, was a reason for being.
Oh, it's wonderful. I really admire the way that you've evolved your relationship with, because when I first met Jamie, you brought him over to England. He was very young. He was probably about 8 or something. I can't remember. He was very, and I was watching one of your videos where you were for the Dunbar Academy, and you could see him going, yeah, Dad, edit. And I was just thinking, yeah, that's just so real. That's so real. And the fact that you're involved with each other's lives so much now, I don't know if that was always the case, but it's just really nice to see. I mean, there's so few dads that stick around. And I remember when you came over for the Wag and Bone show, I just had my son, and I was just splitting up with my son's dad. But we've stayed friends, so it's good. But I remember you having a word with him and saying, you know, it's very important, you know, it's being a dad business. And I'm thinking, oh, bless him, Ian. You really, it matters to you that people bring up the next generation properly. And
you know, I'm not like entirely altruistic. It's every time I talk to you, you keep building me up as like when I did that birthday lecture for you, and you know, there's a picture of you made the birthday cake with my two dogs on it and me like God.
It was Jesus. It was Jesus.
Yeah, Jesus, that was it. Yeah,
special Jesus. And my son has still got it painted up because we painted the beard white, and he was holding a Kong. And my son, I didn't tell my son because he'd been given it as a present from his uncle who lives in San Francisco, and he thought it was hilarious, this Jesus model thing, and it was given as a gift. And I saw it. That's perfect for the cake topping. Ian's birthday, and yes, he's kept it in its livery, so it still exists. But
anyway, as I was saying,
sorry,
I think it's not that I'm like this altruistic person. I think it's that it really does upset me that I don't think people get as much true joy out of living with the dog as I do, and certainly not the true joy I got interacting with my son. And I think that is a crying shame that other parents, especially dads, don't get the chance to experience the sheer pleasure that I have chatting to him. And to this day, you know, we have never had an argument.
Wow.
And there's been some moments of some tricky stuff, you know, we have never had an argument. Yes, we have disagreements, more so in the last 5 years now that he and Kelly are running the company and I'm just the third wheel, you know. But we've never had an argument. It's like, why argue? You can do it your way, I do it my way. We'll see which works best. And I quantify everything. What brings in most money? All right, we'll do it your way. I was wrong, you know. But it really is a true joy, and it's you know, I'm not a dad in the sense that I'm there all the time. I'm very much, it's on my own terms. But when we're together, it just really is very enjoyable and extremely special for me, as it is for him. But I think the luck his two children have now, imagine growing up with a dad like that, which is like a combination of myself and Mimi. See, Mimi is loving, always there, planning everything for children, always considering the other's needs and feelings first. I always think about Ian's needs and feelings. But by and large, I'm a good person. I don't ever want to hurt someone. And I don't ever want disagreements to go unsorted out. Let's talk about it. Let's resolve it. And this is what, when I was interviewed a very long time ago, a TV interview, and they asked me, this back in the 80s, you know, so, you know, why do you teach puppy classes? And I thought about it very seriously. And the first thing that sprung to mind was that this was my US equivalent of a pub. That when I left England and moved to the US, there was nothing resembling a pub where you would go and you would meet people of all, you know, you could meet anyone. You could be talking to a duke and turn around and there's an electrician or someone who's out of work or someone who lives rough, you know. And there's nothing like that here, that if you go to a bar to drink, they would all be lawyers or they'd all be students, you know. And I thought, when I teach puppy classes, it's me being in touch with the real world of real families. And it's kind of like a microscope into family dynamics. And I had, when I first started, I was in the psychology department in Berkeley. Every single psychology professor, one by one, came to observe the classes, because about 5 of them came because they had puppies. And then they said, you've got to see these classes. It is like family psychology in the raw. Everything happens. You see a divorce about to happen. You see a father saying things like, no, I'll do it because I'm much better than you with the dog. I mean, crushing self-esteem and all this stuff. And to see it all work with these puppies and off leash, with Ian like running the class, it was all about people training. It was all about people training, which is my answer now. That this has nothing to do with dogs. It could be off-leash frog classes, or it could be cat training. It's all about changing the behavior of people. That's what it is.
I remember, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this because I don't know how I found this out or why you told me it, but that you were talking to somebody who was involved in human problems with children, and that there was somebody had a child who was in a facility, I think, who kept banging their head against a wall, and their way of dealing with it was to put a helmet on the child to stop him damaging his head. And you said there is another way of doing this, and you taught them how to change the child's behavior to stop banging their head against the wall. And the idea of dog behaviorists maybe helping child psychologists work things out was sort of the thing that people would whisper about but didn't actually acknowledge. And is there much more integration these days where people understand that?
Oh yes, I think now in the human behavioral sciences, there's a lot more applied psychology, where the notion is, the holy grail is, did you change the behavior? You know, it's not, because if you're a psychiatrist, you're probably still prescribing drugs, but in terms of psychologists, social workers, and when you look at social workers and, say, kindergarten school children, you see marvelous examples of high-level applied psychology. I mean, a single person controlling 30 off-leash kindergartners. I mean, it's mind-boggling. And you're worried about one Labrador? Come on. I mean, let's get real. So I think the nitty-gritty is always, did it work? You see, that a lot of people took umbrage. I actually gave a talk at the psychology department on changing the behavior of children. And I said, so much of what we don't like, hyperactivity, noise, we can deal with very easily by putting it on cue and turning it into a game. And so rather than saying no, what you say to the child, oh, not now, this is a shush zone. You know, if you want, do you want to make noise? Then let's go outside and find a noisy section and you can scream to your heart's content. So when we put these behavior problems on cue, and this has always been my philosophy with dogs. I mean, you know, Omaha taught me that, my Malamute. Put the problem on cue, it becomes your friend, because you can teach when, where. Like yesterday, I just posted something about teaching speak, the many reasons why. And one of them is, so you can put your dog in the car and drive to the middle of nowhere, open the sunroof and have a barkathon, so he can get it out of his system. And it's the same with children. And like with Jamie, I remember going to some really fancy restaurant in Scottsdale, Arizona, very fancy. I'd picked something that was just, we shouldn't be going to, with a 6-year-old child. And I said, Jamie, this is going to take a pretty long time. I'd say hour and a half. I said, do you want to have some silly time beforehand? He said, an hour and a half. I said, yeah, it's an hour and a half of sitting quietly in a chair. Said, yeah, Jamie needs some silly time. We went outside and he jumped around and made weird noises. And then we came back in and he's still being stupid, walking along the corridor. Then I said, silly Jamie to normal Jamie.
Oh, bless.
He walks in like this, you know. And so I got a lot of flack for that seminar. And And I was actually a little hurt by it, but I went home and thought about it. And then I wrote a letter back to be passed out to all the seminar attendees and saying, you look on me as a dog trainer because that's how you labeled me. I look on me as a person who's interested more than anything in changing the behavior, the needs, the feelings, and the temperament of people. Mm-hmm. It just so happens I'm a dog trainer now. I do have PhDs in, a number of sciences, veterinary science, psychology, and a fake one in agriculture, which is my favorite that I got from Denmark. I mean, it's not fake, it's a DHC, an honorary PhD, but that's my favorite because I'm a farm boy.
Oh.
And as I always tell my cousin who ended up with the farm, he inherited everything, 600 acres, a beautiful rural Hertfordshire countryside. And he says, yeah, well, I went to agriculture college. I said, Jamie, I have a PhD in agriculture. I said, Paul, rather, is his name. Anyway, I took a lot of flack and people found it demeaning. Mm-hmm. I said, no, the nitty gritty is, did it work? Mm-hmm. Did it work? And if you'll notice very quickly when I'm around children, they aren't making noise. They aren't being inattentive. They're focused on me. Mm. And it's because the way I modulate my voice, like I'm reciting nonsense poetry when I talk to them. So I'll say things like, now we're going to talk about a secret. Mm-hmm. Who likes secrets? Yeah, a secret game. This game is called Jazz Up and Settle Down. Or silly, I make up names for it. And then we'll put noise on cue. Well, when you put it on cue, why do you do that? So in a game, you can teach shush. Why do you put activity on cue? Why? So in a game, at your convenience, you can teach stay or be still or sit on a chair. And so I find when you approach it from their point of view, children have to be noisy and active. Yes. It just becomes so much more manageable, and then you can have a proper dialogue. And one thing you'll never find me doing, unless it's a joke, is baby talking, puppies or children. 3 days old, I talk to a child like they have an IQ of 120, and I talk to them about real things. And I find their eyes are just focused on me, because I'm obviously delivering real information, not who's the Gucci, din, 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 din. That only lasts for a while. I start to talk in real words, quite long words about real stuff. And anyway, more questions.
Have you ever done any TV programs about the crossover between what you've learned?
No, I did one telly program in England, the Dr Dunbar, which I loved. It was before its time, though. It wasn't, we weren't ready for that. But then a lot of then copycats accelerated getting into it. Coming back to the US, so many. I've been interviewed by production companies, let's say 100 times for 100 different programs, mainly on Animal Planet, and it's never come to fruition. And it is so fatuous. It depends on who you know. So like Animal Planet, I was turned down for the same program 3 times in a row by 3 different production companies that did a worldwide search and chose me as the host. 3 independent companies choosing me. And the guy at Animal Planet turned me down 3 times in a row. First time because he said, oh no, he's got a foreign accent. We don't want that. Hello there, mate. No, here's a croc, Animal Planet, come on. Nearly everybody's got a foreign accent. But then, of course, he had to turn me down the second time and the third time. He should have told these other 2 production companies, look for anyone but Ian Dunbar. So we did get one program going, but I dropped out of it because the producer says, oh, it's got to be edgier. Can you be the judge, kind of like a Simon Cowell type judge? I said, no, not when it's children training puppies. I'm going to be as rewarding as I can and as encouraging as I can. And then they said to me, the producer, well, it's just as well. The program's not edgy enough anyway. You know, we want to have like one of the children having cancer or the parents having a divorce to make the program more edgy. And I just said, this is meant to be about teaching puppies and dogs.
Yeah.
I said, I don't think you really need me involved in it. So what happened to it? I think it did air, but it didn't last long.
There's so many copycat programs on there that are rushed out, and they don't want to take any risk, so they just make the same thing a million times. But I would have really liked to see, you know, like David Attenborough has programs built around him. I'd like to see you doing the dog version, and it being beautifully shot, and it being something that is cerebral as well as entertaining, because that's the thing. So many of these formula shows we're tiring of, and people are changing the way that they view. People take, things are evolving. But that's one of my side projects. I started as something called Waiting for Doggo.
Yeah.
Is a small production company that is going to make, allegedly going to make, programs in a different way, in that we would produce things collectively, like a cooperative of people who believe in what we're doing, and then we reverse sell it into whatever distribution device is the most appropriate. And the idea being you keep control, because I mean, you've seen it from the talent side, where you get wound up by people who have got a very clear, they won't tell you, well, we're looking for a woman to present this. They won't say that. They won't, but they have it in that they've already done the mood board with, and it has to be a woman of certain, it looks like this. And it's so fatuous. It really is, because often the people commissioning don't have pets in their life. They don't have family in their life because they're living in a different way. So they're not the target audience. So people are producing programs trying to second guess what the person next up the chain wants to see. And there must be room for some real stuff that is done.
Yeah, the time is obviously coming for, meritocracy, because the how-to is all there now to produce high quality programming and to be able to show it, because you can show little 30-second teasers on Facebook, on YouTube, on all over. So it's very easy to produce a program. Everything's there to edit it and then to monetize it. I hate that word.
Yes.
Every time I use it, it makes me smile, though, because when Jamie and Kelly started running the company, it's three of us, we went to a conference, and it was called SM Econ, stood for the economy of social media. And it was our first bonding trip in LA. And they used the word monetize, which means you've got something, now you've got to make money out of it, essentially. But every time I use it, I just burst out laughing. But it used to, in the old way, you see, when you have production companies or major TV stations, you were totally beholden to that, totally. And it changed at a whim. So like when I had my program, we had it and they said, we want you to do it for 10 years and we have the money. Then they lost their license down in Southampton, ITV.
Do you remember how that started? I don't know if you, because I mentioned earlier that I was going around giving people your video. And I had lunch with this TV producer who was doing a local TV program, a series on animals. And she had got every episode planned, and it was to not go national, it was regional. And she'd already got her dog behaviourist, her dog trainer. So she wasn't interested in when I was selling you in. And then I gave them the video, and then she ditched the whole thing and just did you. Yeah, was it Victoria? What was her name?
That's Victoria. Oh, yes, that's right. And
I never got my video back, by the way. She kept it. So
I came over. yeah, 1 year, and did 1 hour in her show.
Yeah.
Can't remember what it was called now. And then she said, yeah, we should do a whole program on this. And they had contacts, you see, at the Southern Production, the ITV affiliate, I think it was. And the guy in charge just loved me and said, no, we want this to be a regular thing. Then they lost the license in the bidding war, and it changed to TVS,
Oh,
I
yes.
think. And we had to start again with no contacts at all. It was very difficult to come back, and we never got the same money. So it was now just 6 programs in a series instead of 10. And but it was, you were beholden to the production company, and then you're kind of handcuffed by the producer and the director. Now, I was lucky there. There was only once where they held me back. And I said, just let me off leash here. I want to be silly. Nope, nope, she wouldn't let me. But by and large, she was very creative. The producer, that's Veronica Charwood.
Veronica, that was the name.
Yeah, and the director, Steve. They worked together as a very good team. And it was, I love doing the program. I mean, I now, it's up on Dunbar Academy as a joke. We call it Retro Dunbar. And it's the only remaining copies of it now.
I was searching. When I was doing my research for this. I do research, hard to believe, but I was having a look through YouTube, and I could find a few snippets, but hardly anything. I was thinking, now I'm sure somewhere I've got videos of because it was we Spillers did special offers on
Spillers, yeah,
and they must have it in the archive somewhere.
They were great. It happens till you move, then, because these things are huge now, the masters. Each one's this big and heavy. It's not now that, I mean, the whole thing's on this phone, for goodness sake. All we have, but it used to be the editing, you couldn't edit. It didn't exist. It was you did offline forever. It was very difficult to do. And then you did the online stuff that was so expensive.
Yeah.
And now you can do it on the computer I'm on now, same as the whole, system. So it's, yeah, I think what we've gone through was a predictable low point in online media and stuff, which was predicted by an Englishman. I remember when I was at a TED talk, and he was worried about the internet and the web. And he says, if you remove editors, the filter's gone, and we're going to get so much dross. Where will we find the quality? Well, you find the quality, say, in YouTube or TikTok by numbers. They rise to the top by numbers. Yes. But I think when you're looking at now the people producing really good TV programs, it's not the networks anymore. It's Netflix, it's Amazon, it's, and they're turning out good program after good program because they're thinking, what is a good program? Yes. They're not thinking, well, I want my girlfriend on it.
Yeah.
Or I want it to be about this view of this subject. I want it to have a single plot line. Oh my God. Or it has a main plot and a subplot. No. I want to see a plot line where there are so many twists and turns as you go through this. It's like you're in a maze, and at the end of it, you thought, I never would have thought that. But it's all there. If you were smart, you could have worked it out, So there's really good alternative stuff now, and it will come for dogs.
I'm hoping. I don't know. The recording I did before this one was with Jemima Harrison, who did the documentary Pedigree Dogs Exposed. But she obviously did lots of documentaries before that and since that. And I think what she does is fantastically interesting. I mean, she works for several years on a project and then presents it to the BBC, who then decide where it's going to go.
Yeah.
And if it's really good, it ends up prime time, and then they sell it around the world. But if she was working for somebody who's every step of the way would go, oh no, can you do it like this? Can you do it like that? she would never produce the brilliant things she does. And it's really nice to see people doing good, deep work, and then ultimately it being seen, because her latest one was on Parkinson's disease, and she did the first ever documentary real time on a drug trial, where it was a very novel way of a very dangerous way of putting the drug straight into the brain, so it didn't go by the, because normally things can't go straight into the brain. You have to have a portal. And to have spent years and years with people who are very, very ill, getting to know them, there is a way that television can be more than just fleeting entertainment. If it's real, if it really is real, someone doing their best to tell a story, it works. And I'd like to see lots more people around the world producing content that they passionately believe in, rather than us. I mean, it's a huge liberation, the internet, isn't it? I mean, that's the thing. You can experiment. Other people can find voices. And what I loved to see was, I embraced Facebook many years ago, when I quite liked the idea of freely making friends with people who cared about dogs, and our Dogs Today Facebook page suddenly just took off, and we had people
huge,
all people all around the world were just united. I mean, it was so funny. People thought everybody was just next door, and you'd have a story, and people in Texas would be sharing a lost dog that was actually, in Egypt or something. It was really confusing, but we found something that we all agreed on globally. And it was a global market that you suddenly realized, dog ownership, the bond we have is the same. And we have something that's the same with all these people all around the world. Instead of looking at differences, we're all alike in this respect and our love of dogs. And it costs nothing to talk to people, and you can change things without selling a product. And
and that's precisely what Dogs Today did. I mean, you were very effective at now changing the laws of the land vis-a-vis dogs, making England a better place for dogs now. I mean, there was one big screw up really with laws and dogs, which is the stupid breed bans, and which is insanity personified. But Dogs Today has done a lot there.
But I think what we in a way, the campaigning journalism in dogs was quite new. So if we would have been in women's magazines, there would have been the path would have already been trodden down. But I think that it's something that there's still so much work to do, because I do think that we're drawing a parallel that Ginsburg, I say your, because I think of you as an American now, the Supreme Court judge that changed everything for women.
Oh yeah.
The legislation back then was terribly sexist. In our country, the legislation is from an era where the dog wasn't part of the family, and there's so many bits that are still wrong, that don't reflect the way the dog is regarded. So the dog is chattel, the dog is still a thing. And it doesn't reflect, if somebody steals your dog, it's the same as them stealing your phone at the moment, which is just off. And there's lots of other things, like ear cropping's coming back here. And you should think, oh, good grief, why do you want to chop bits off dogs? And there's a resurgence in fashion rather than dogs being a lovely part of the family. So it's a constant thing that you eventually give up and say you can't actually educate. You've just got to encourage people, because no matter how many times you tell people don't buy dogs from puppy farms, they as soon as they look at a puppy, their brains turn to mush and they go home with it.
Well, to me, that's what education is, 95% encouraging and motivating. Just telling people what to do is barely sufficient. And especially if when you're telling them what to do, you're telling approach always with the whole notion of, like getting a puppy from a puppy farm. I wouldn't mention it till a throwaway at the end of what I say. I say, when you get a puppy, do check that it's been socialized with at least 100 people and handled, and that it's at least house trained and chew toy trained. It would be really dumb to buy a puppy that's going pee and poop all over the place, And so you must check with the breeder. See, I haven't even mentioned puppy mills.
No.
That you must check with the breeder. Well, they can't with a puppy mill. I say it's really, and when you're buying a puppy that's been allowed to do it everywhere and anywhere, he's more difficult to house train now. Because for the first 8 weeks, he was allowed to do it wherever he wants.
Yeah, I'd really like to see something that, because breeders in this country have become seen as some sort of, well, it's probably the meanest thing you can do is call someone a breeder. They've got a terrible reputation, and we need people to breed dogs well. And it'd be nice to have some sort of framework that encourages people to do it properly and do it well and actually care. And at the moment, there doesn't seem to be a paternal sort of organization that tells people how to do it properly. It's sort of discouraging people from breeding.
Well, I think the time has come for prospective pet owners and existing, puppy owners to be that universal force that until we have the buyer influencing the seller, it's not going to change. And I was just thinking, it was just this January and February, I was going to launch this massive education program for prospective puppy buyers. So they know the questions to ask a breeder. They know the questions to ask a pet store owner, the veterinarian, because all three of those will ask questions of you and lord it over you. And you've got to remember that in all professions, 50% of them fall below median. A vet's just not good because he's a vet. No, 50% will be below median. You want a good vet. You want a good pet store, and you want an incredible breeder. And so here are the questions to ask, that this breeder is a 7-star breeder. And we were going to launch this program. And then March 13th, we closed down our company, our puppy school, and how all that changed. And now I'm talking about those things like socialization. Now we can't have 100 people in the breeding kennel. We can't have 100 people in the home. So now we have to be very creative to get those puppies socialized during the pandemic. Otherwise, by the time they're 8, 10 months, 12 months, we're going to have this resurgence of dogs that are fearful of people and difficult to handle and biting.
Wow.
So we have to do it. So I've come up with lots of sneaky things, like, for example, in socialization, always think family and friends first. Who are the people this dog will meet as an adult? Make sure the dog sees them now. That can be done safely. You go and walk your dog where you meet, or you carry your dog, you put him in your car, someone comes up and picks up your dog, takes him to their car and does all the handling exercises. So you list your family and friends. And when you do the weird stuff at home, like the silly walks and dressing up and stuff, you want to wear used t-shirts of your family and friends, because that's the way the dog's going to recognize you, through smell. And since pandemic, twice here, all the dogs in the training room have just erupted and gone ballistic. Why? I fell over.
Oh.
Me fell over. It doesn't have to be a stranger with a beard and a hat and a stick, of a different race. It was me. And so when you dress up as different people and talk differently and have silly walks, then you do silly stuff, you can actually do a lot of the socialization yourself. You can't have 100 different people here doing it, but you can do the work of 100 people and have a lot of fun. You sit your dog down and say, okay, doggy, well, today I'm going to be a clown who's underwater. So not only do I have big shoes and a big red nose and funny paint on my face, but also I'm going to have a scuba outfit on. You know, it doesn't take much out of the ordinary to spook dogs out. For example, try it with your dog. Move the table into a different place in the living room. See what your dog does. I've had dogs come in and go, oh, there's a table in the living room. I mean, yeah. How many times you walk past this table? It's just today it's moved. So we thought of ways where you can do the socialization and the training even better now in a pandemic when we are sheltering at home. So anyway.
There was something you said earlier that I just suddenly, I was going to write it down on a bit of paper, so I came back to it, but I'm going to interject. You once went to Japan. You've probably been to Japan a million times, and
about 25 times.
Yeah, I remember there was a you saw there was a problem in that. Well, it wasn't a problem. The way Japanese people buy their dogs is via a pet shop, because there's just any other way of doing it. And instead of saying, well, that's, you know, that's awful, let's stop it, you found a way of making the pet shop better. And I thought that was a really interesting way of doing things. So what was it that you encouraged them to do? You told them that they could make more money if they trained the dogs before they sold them.
Essentially, yeah, that if they sold a better product, they could charge twice as much for it. But the way it works at the moment, they get them from wholesalers at about 5 weeks of age, and they come from the puppy mills, which are largely run by crime. So I was not going to go into Japan and insult everyone in my audience and all these various crime syndicates. So all I said was, you know, if you have a pet store, if you just institute the standard open paw, minimal guidelines for puppy raising, and it's that they, what is it for, I can't remember, good Lord, for comfort, companionship, education, and something else, entertainment. Yeah, so comfort, companionship, education, entertainment. So basically you're going to house train it, you're going to handle it. So if you then sell it as a house trained puppy, you can charge twice as much. Well, there was this guy in the seminar who left, and I thought, oh God, I hope I haven't insulted him. But he came up afterwards with the big boss of the organization I work for and wanted to meet me, then invited me down to Fukuoka, which is like the California of Japan. And he owned a very prestigious chain of pet stores in Japan. And he said, yeah, we've been using your open paw method. Well, I know he's lying, because this is the first time I mentioned it in Japan. And I said, you have? I said, for how long? He said, oh, 42 minutes. He said, I left your seminar to call my company. Now it's working in all of my pet stores, and I'd like you to come down and look. So we went and looked, and it was amazing. They had taken it verbatim, and it was words out of my mouth that these Japanese, mainly girls like 15, 16, 17, 18, working in the pet store, were doing all the puppies in cages on an hourly clock. Every hour, on the hour, they came out of the cage, were put in a toilet. When they peed, it was ichi ni san, 3 treats for peeing, ichi ni san. And then if they pooped, ichi ni san. Then they come over to be handled, doing my handling routine, going through the first 13 subliminal bite triggers, you know, first the collar and a treat, then the ear and the second ear, because dogs have 2 ears, you know. And they were saying this in Japanese, and exactly what I said. And then the muzzle, open the muzzle and a treat, and then 1 paw, 2 paws, 3 paws, 4, because dogs have 4 paws. And the thing about the ears and the paws, see, most people are right-handed, give a treat with their right hand, and so only handle the dog's right ear with their left hand. You know, the dog's left ear never gets handled. The dog's hind legs never get handled. And as any vet or groomer knows, You know, you can touch certain parts of the body, but not others without getting nailed. So, and then he shows me the signage, and I loved it. And it was a lot of money, like say $5,000, you know, house trained, chew toy trained, manners trained, socialization program in progress. Because he wanted to say socialize. I say, no, you can't do that because it's ongoing. But you can say socialization in progress. And then he says, and look at this, there's a cage with a lab in it that's really too old for the cage now. And it has his price, $5,000 crossed out. It says $2,500, bargain basement price, not house trained, destructive, noisy, aggressive. I said, you can't do that. He says, oh, no, we do the same stuff with him. He's house trained, he's a sweetie. We just labeled him differently. As soon as a cage is empty here, we put him in to be sold, you know, but there'll always be one dog to show the difference. Do you want a house trained dog or an unhouse trained one? Duh. Now the buyer says, I want it house trained, you idiot. What are you doing raising dogs? I got the CPDT in the States. That's your certification program. So APDT is education. The CPDT certifies you as a dog trainer. It's now the largest certification body in the world. Okay. And they put out an email and someone sent it to me. And it says, oh, if you need your CEUs in the time of the pandemic, the best place to go is dunbaracademy.com. Loads of, you know, Ian's lectures, and you get your CEUs for CPDT or IAABC and so on. I thought, wow, that's a real shout out. Who's it from? Who's the ED? Well, I won't say his name, but let's say he's my favorite breeder in the world. He breeds Basenjis. The entire litter has been socialized and handled as neonates and are house trained by the time they're 4 weeks old, the whole litter. He had videos of this and he showed me. And then all of them learned to sit stay by about 4.5 weeks, sit stay and down stay. Now, certainly the downstay is more like a plonk collapse, but it stays there for 5 seconds, you know. And not to do that is insane. That to me is what is inhumane. I'm sorry. What is inhumane, Ian? It's wasting a puppy's brain before it's 8 weeks old.
I just think you're onto something there that we haven't got in this country at the moment. Is if we had a breeders' academy where we taught people how to do that, and then we would help people find the dogs that are already house trained and already, because instead of it being in a pet shop, if you have people at home who are rearing these puppies and bringing them up in that method, you know, people would hunt them out. I mean, people want dogs that are already part trained. And you mentioned open paw, and we should talk a bit more about that, because when it was your birthday, when you came over and we had a birthday afternoon tea for you, where with dogs included, Kelly was obviously heard your talk a million times, so she wasn't actually going to be sitting down and listening, and she was sort of hanging around at the back, and I was hanging around the back because I always like to watch people when they're that you're talking, because you get them all quiet and they don't even cough. It's really lovely to watch. And I was chatting to Kelly, and I'd never met Kelly before, and I asked her, you know, what do you do, you know, and she mentioned open paw, and I'd never heard of it before, and I got so excited. This was quite a long time ago, and I said, that's just brilliant. You have this thing that goes, so you turn rescues into not prisons, they become universities, and every dog becomes trained. Wow.
Cross between a university and a country club.
It's just so lovely, and you teach all the volunteers to be trainers, so they're not just pooping, you know, clearing up poo and taking dogs for walk. They're actually learning something as well as volunteering. So there's
no feces to clear up. The first thing they do is house train all the dogs, so all the feces goes in the feces bucket in the dog toilet, and that takes about 3 days. And you don't need any money to do this because it's the 100 or 200 volunteer base. And what are you giving the volunteers? An education in how to train a dog, which
It's
goes home with them and
such
to
a
their neighbors. Yeah.
beautiful scheme. And I must admit, when I got so excited to talk to Kelly, I was like, right, oh, wow. And I, just like I used to go around with your serious puppy training video, I then, everywhere I went, I talked about open paw. And I went to all the big charities and said, you really should be doing this. Oh, we're doing our own version. I don't know, I know you're not really. No, you know, no, have a look. This is brilliant.
Yeah.
And then someone else said to me, I went to a talk from the RSPCA and somebody, I don't know, I must have brought it up. And they go, oh yeah, we're doing it in Australia. I was thinking, well, why aren't you doing it here? This is strange. And then finally, Radio 4, who
Oh, yes, I remember this.
You and Yours, which is a
Yeah.
lovely program. Everybody who works on it is dog mad. So any excuse, they will do a dog item. And it was Christmas was coming up. And they said, right, we're going to do a dog Christmas special. And just, you know, this is quite a long way off. And we were going, you know, well, what's the best thing in the world about dogs? And I went, open paw. And they went, oh, we'd have to go to California, wouldn't we? And it happened, didn't it? They did a whole program on the future, and it was so lovely. They came over, and I don't know, did they come over in person, or there was somebody who was based in California? There was an interview of you and Kelly,
Yes.
and they were talking about open paw, and they had the whole show was doggy. It was lovely. It's probably still online if anyone wants to watch it, listen to it. And listening to the program was Claire Williams from the National Animal Welfare Trust.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
She heard it and she went, open paw, what a fantastic idea. She got on and did it. And then I think you and Yours may have followed it up and did a, well, what happened next? And of course it's brilliant. And they're doing open paw for cats now as well. Yeah. And it's just like, oh, their rehoming rates went through the roof. The people wanted to volunteer because the waiting lists for people to volunteer because everyone, what a wonderful place to work, because every dog is they don't have to worry. You know, if they've got 1 million staffies in, we've got 1 million staffies that can do different things, and they sit nicely when people come and they
are now proven friendly and confident around people, children included, and other dogs. You know, people know what they're getting rather than buying a pig in a poke. Yeah, and we did cats at the beginning too. It was cats and dogs. And,
they're just picking it up now because to go and get a cat from a sanctuary that is trained to go in its box without it being a fight, it's just a miracle. And you know, a rebranding that rescue is not it's a place where it's a logical choice because you're going to get a trained dog. So if breeders could train their dogs before they sell them, well, probably wouldn't be any dogs. There'd be a lot less dogs in rescue, wouldn't there?
Well, I think it's a wonderful opportunity that a friend of mine years ago started a database. She wasn't very computer savvy, but she started a database for the Bay Area for dogs in shelters. I mean, think how big that is now, Pet Finders and what have you.
Yes.
And I think Puppy Finder, for listing breeders that are adhering to the minimum mental health guidelines. The handling is important, the neonatal handling, desensitizing all of the subliminal bite triggers. What holds people back is at 8 weeks, a puppy looks perfect. At 3 months, he looks perfect. They don't realize the damage that's been done in how many millions of brain cells are dead now because nothing was done with the puppy. See, they were coming back full circle now, the Marion Diamond research. If you don't handle the masses of cells that die off, is unbelievable. Millions and millions and millions and millions within the first 2 weeks of a puppy's life. You use it or lose it. And getting them used to stuff, the earlier you do it, the easier it is, you know? So handled and handled and handled, then house trained, chew toy trained, manners trained. And that's it. and that people going to look at the puppies have to grade them. So we get feedback that the breeders are actually doing this, that they all pee on cue, they all poop on cue, they all come and sit and lie down and roll over and sit, stay and follow you. Easily done by 8 weeks. As I say, but how I got off track was Brad, the guy who did the shout out about Dunbar Academy for the CPDT, had videos of his Basenji litter doing the lot. And that's the proof. And so now what a new puppy buyer, and before people get all over me because I'm mentioning puppies, every rescue dog was once a puppy where somehow we screwed up. Let's not forget that. Why do we have rescue dogs? Because we screwed up with puppies. Whether they were out there, whether they were feral, whatever they were, we screwed up with puppies. If we now, do it right with puppies, we will eventually empty out the shelters.
Yes.
Anyway, they need to be, each litter needs to be videoed by the prospective puppy buyer to check they are doing it and graded. And so now they have like Angie's List for breeders. You see, we can't leave it to the kennel club or breed clubs to say what a good breeder is, because they haven't a clue, lots of them. No. They don't even know about neonatal handling and what it does to an animal or what the lack thereof. They don't know the period of apoptosis when tens of millions of brain cells die just because they weren't used. Brain cells for balance in a 4-week-old puppy. No, you should have a room that's like a jungle gym. There are 100 items on the floor, empty dustbins, beer cans. There's great big tubs filled up with empty water bottles, empty beer cans that crinkle, and the unstable seesaws. And that's the puppet's play area when you do recalls. So that he's developing a few brain cells in his inner ear, and he has good balance, and the same for vision, and the same for smell, and the same, for everything. Otherwise, the brain cells die. Most people, by the time they buy a puppy, it's already brain dead.
Yeah, well,
it's not a normal puppy.
The increasingly the breeds that, or the types of dogs that are really popular now are not kennel club dogs, so they're crosses. But we're finding that the money that the breeders are making, they are increasing in scale, and the buildings they're being housed in are passing all the building regulations because they're nice modern. It's modern factory farming is what's going on. But if there was a criteria that just like you changed, well, the dog show world changed the way the Cavalier looked many years ago, 1920 something or other. They wanted the dogs to look like it wasn't a painting, and everybody started breeding to that because there was a lot of money. If you made it so that the most expensive puppies are the ones that are correctly reared, and that the public knows the difference, then these people who are investing in these new factories to breed dogs in, just like the Japanese, would be motivated to put the same professionalism into rearing correctly and training. And it becomes, they're going to make loads of money, but they're also going to improve the dog that the people take home. And
it's very interesting. When we developed Open Paw shelter behavior program, we did it alongside the development of a shelter medicine program, a veterinary program. And when we looked, Sheila Sergerson was in charge of that. And when we looked at what are the guidelines then for medical health in any dog or any animal facility, and it pretty much all came down to architecture. Okay, and which determines the contact of animals, how many animals in a pen, do they see each other, they go nose to nose, and what have you. Well, when we then looked at minimal mental health guidelines, we have to change the architecture. So you look at all these fancy new kennels now. Like I was just looking at plans, I did it for free, of a massive dog facility in Dubai. And there was no consideration for mental health.
No.
So how is someone going to pet this dog if it's perspex? Oh, well, it has the air filtration. It said, no, behavioral health is as important as medical health. You are raising animals in a medical bubble. But because of that, now they aren't getting the socialization they need, the care and what have you. So we actually changed the very architecture. So we've been involved in a lot of this, number of shelters, a number of doggy daycares, but designing them from the viewpoint of behavior. So everything is one way, for example. You walk the dogs one way through this facility. It's circular. Oh, wow. Yeah. I think they did have one designed in England years ago, the circular, all the runs were pie-shaped with the feeding thing in the middle. It makes so much sense, you know? And because we have to handle them. We have to handle them. And otherwise, it will never be the dog it could have been. You can't catch up with brain death, you know, or the death of many, many brain cells. You can't repair that. We can rehabilitate, but the dog will never be what it could have been. And when you talk about a quality, a mental quality, as complicated as, say, social savvy, how the dog interprets the behavior of other dogs, it doesn't know, or how it interprets the behavior of people, it doesn't know. You need millions and millions of brain cells to accomplish that. Well, they're all gone now because they weren't used, because the dog only met one person, the breeder, a middle-aged woman, and her best friend, a middle-aged woman. They've never met a man. They've never met a child, let alone 6 children screaming, you know. And so what breeders think is socialization is ridiculous. It's not even 1/10 of what needs to be done. And, you know, my favorite doggy professional in the world is a trainer who is so successful in everything she does. It's ridiculous. Like she trains all sorts of dogs, sniffer dogs for medical reasons, for bombs, for drugs, protection dogs, assistance dogs, what have you. But how good is she? Well, she competed in the Working Dog Olympics, which is about 300 competitors, all police and military. She's the only civilian. What does she do? She won first place in 7 out of 8 events. She's pretty good. She hires breeders to raise dogs the way she wants them. She insists it's done right. When you see what she does, she is light years above anyone. And I've posted some videos on YouTube in terms of the stuff she's doing, and you wouldn't believe it. What happens to these dogs? A kindergarten class comes to the kennel, and they're each going to handle the dogs and go through 13 different subliminal bite stimuli with each dog and then reward it. Desensitizing all this stuff with shouting and singing as well. Everything's done to song. Brilliant. You know, look in his ear, give him a treat. Look in the other ear, another treat. For, you know, I can't do the song, but, you know, the point is they're exposed to so much that when something weird happens with a 10-month-old dog, he says, been there, done that. Yeah, 8 weeks, went through all that stuff. People falling down, been there, done it. Someone falling on top of me, someone spilling a saucepan of scalding water, really hurting me, or dropping a pile of heavy books. Been there, done that, you know.
Well, anyway. I think we've got something there. I think we, you know, this needs to happen, that we direct breeders. Let's talk another time about how we pull this together, because if you've already got the course on what a breeder needs to do, then I think we should start.
We've had, you know, what every profession needs to do, because I think every profession should pull its socks up a little. We haven't moved along as quickly in the behavioral side of what you're doing. And so I sat down for 2 years and wrote, what do I think pet stores should be doing? What do I think veterinarians should be doing? What should breeders be doing? It's all available for free in a section, strange enough, called the Free Course Collection at dunbaracademy.com. It's been up there for 2 years for free.
Wow.
But as I said, our plans to promote these programs just stopped in March when we had other concerns now. How do we make money to keep our staff on payroll? Because
Yes.
we've got puppy trainers who can't train. And we did it. We kept them all on board. We paid them all. Kelly got online puppy classes up and running really quickly, and Jamie got Dunbar Academy making more money than Sirius did, because Sirius was always their bread and butter. It paid for every free program we did because it was a well-run for-profit corporation. But when Sirius suddenly goes to 0% input in terms of money overnight, both Kelly stepped up to the plate, getting it online within 1 month, and Jamie increased Dunbar Academy fourfold within 2 months. So now it's bringing in enough money to pay all of our trainers who weren't even training for 6 weeks. No, so it's all there.
I must admit, I kept seeing Facebook adverts for the Dunbar Academy, and it kept saying Ian's going to do a webinar at this time, and I was thinking, wow.
They are but from a third party. They're nothing to do with us, actually. It's a third party who is promoting. You see, we allow people, if you're a doggy person now, I should probably say this, you're probably screwed because there's so much you can't do, which means you can't earn money to buy food and pay rent. So we came up with a wonderful formula, a subscription model like Dogs Today, but this is all online. And ours is so deep and we add so much to it that if you tried to binge watch everything there and you were watching for 18 hours a day, it would take you 3 to 4 months to get through it all. So it's subscription model, but we allow people to benefit from selling our subscription model by we share it with them 50-50. So if they become affiliates, and there's one guy who I would say is a professional affiliate. He now makes about $8,000 a month doing nothing because he promoted Dunbar Academy with Facebook ads. So he's actually a professional promoter. It's a little confusing because he uses a picture of me and uses my name. So that's going to stop in about another month because we don't need it now. But anyone can do that. Just promoting DunbarAcademy.com. First, you have to become an affiliate and get an affiliate code, like I think you're going to give out here, right?
Oh, if I can remember how to do it, yes.
What did I email you 3 days ago? Have you got the code to give out to everybody so that then Dogs Today
by the podcast it will be
share in our profits?
It'll be up there. It'll be up there.
That's good. It's better. Across the screen the whole time.
Oh yes, we'll get it done. But I think that's the thing. I must admit, I've always wanted your books over the years have always been absolutely brilliant information, but it's not you because people have to read it. So this is the perfect medium, is snippets of videos, and you can find things on the Academy. It's also organized because as Jamie edited you, because I know you said when we talked earlier that he had digitized your brain, which I thought was a wonderful idea, but he's made it so that you can find the bit you need.
He's doing that more and more now. We're so big, we can't even find stuff ourselves. So making it more accessible. But Jamie's expression on his face is not that we're going to edit this out. It's like, Dad, I've heard this 4 times before because I've watched every video of every seminar you've ever given. And he knows all the stories, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So whatever.
No. I was thinking it was quite useful that you have somebody that does, signpost things for other people, because that's the thing. You've done so much that having somebody archiving it so that it's in bite-sized pieces, so people can find things. So
anyway, what do I want? So I'll tell you what I want to happen. And it's kind of like a TV program, but of course it won't be on TV, it'll be on the internet. I've tried to get it to happen for now 25 years. Dealt with many producers, even big producers like Sam Simon, you know, what he produced, Friends, was it? And, you know,
and was it The Simpsons?
no, oh, I don't know, but whatever.
Oh,
I know a lot of TV people. It hasn't happened. We can now make it happen. We tried it on Dogstar Daily, and we called it World's Dog Trainer and America's Dog Trainer, because I got so fed up with everyone bitching about Cesar Millan. So I thought, all right, here's your chance. Give me a 20-minute video of you doing the best you can with the dog, because I've got a program for it called America's Dog Trainer. And then we did World's Dog Trainer. And you know what? I wrote to about 200 trainers. I barely got back 20 replies of people that did it. So all these trainers are willing to bitch at someone else doing it wrong, won't actually do it themselves. What I want is a program with a format like this. It involves 100 trainers who train dogs. And they pick a dog and they train it. Maybe for a minute, maybe for 2 hours. Maybe they know what they're going to teach, maybe they don't, but they're just training the dog and verbalizing what they do and why they do it. The program would be little 90-second clips of all these 100 trainers. Maybe it would be, today we have different ways to deal with barking. We have 3 videos of Dr. Dunbar because he has 3 essential ways of teaching shush. Okay, but we're going to have 100 videos of people teaching shush. Pick one that you like. You know, so it could be we do it by topic, or you don't know what you're going to watch. It's training this dog to do a recall. He's never been off leash in his life. Like Adobe I trained in Japan. Now we're letting him off leash in a 100-yard long dog park. That was fun to do with cameras rolling, but we did it, you know? And so it's just people training dogs, but saying why we're going to do it, rather than this formulaic bullshit of showing a problem, which probably happened as a result of the training anyway, you know, a dog barking at the front door or biting someone, then showing some mindless, laborious training, you know, then showing the dog being perfect, which probably was the way it was before training with some of the people out there in the programs. And then the owner saying, oh, you're so wonderful. You've trained my dog. I love you. He's a different dog now, from just glimpses of edited footage that isn't real anyway. So I just want real unedited stuff of trainers training dogs where you can see the difference in the dog from the beginning to the end, you know, and lots and lots of methods. And you pick one you like. Maybe you don't like talking. I talk to dogs all the time. I am motor mouth. You should have heard me today. I went in and a dog went woof. I said, shush. He went woof. I said, that's it. I'm coming in now. I'm very disappointed. So I talked for about 10 minutes to get up to the door. I'm saying, really, it's a disappointment. That type of woofing is babyish, puppyish. It's just not grown up. You are really betraying the fact that you are just a worthless worm. So can we now be quiet? Because I am doing a webinar with a good friend of mine who used to be the editor of the Kennel Club's Gazette, you know, and dog. I'm not kidding. I had this dialogue with these dogs and they're all sitting there now, lying down. I said, all right, you're all being good dogs now. And I said by name, so-and-so good dog. Fido good dog, Spot good dog. So then I left and I went straight back in and said, you're still being good dogs. You know, I mean, that's the way I train. Have you heard a woof from them? No. I actually heard one.
I did hear one earlier.
One little woof. Well, there's 7 dogs in there.
Wow.
They're all in training.
So what dogs do you have now? Because
it's horrible. They've all turned into golden retrievers. It used to be labs and lab crosses. Then it was lab goldens, and now we've just got a bunch of goldens.
Because the famous dog that was the Alaskan Malamute that
Omaha.
Yes, I'm so many stories.
He was lovely, lovely dog.
You've not felt that you could have another Alaskan Malamute?
Well, after Omaha, I got Phoenix, who Omaha died when he was 5. It was horrible. I love that dog. And he was my first dog. you know, other dogs who belong to my dad, or, you know, what have you. Then I got Phoenix, who I rescued when she was like 5 months old. And Phoenix, I wish she would die, I think, but she lived to be 17. I mean, it wasn't there. And I think it was too early. I actually hated her because she wasn't Omaha. And I didn't train her because I thought she was trained because Omaha was trained. I kind of cheated her. And I had her for 17 years. And so then I thought, I think I'll take a break from Malamutes because Omaha was 17 years in the past. The beauty of him and how wonderful he was. But I just started thinking about them just last week and thinking, God, I really do like Malamutes, you know.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a toss-up: Rottie, Malamute, American Bulldog, or just a big pit, but with ears, obviously, and a tail. So it's a toss-up. Probably those three the closest, or a big old hound like Claude. I really like Claude, that big 110-pound special needs dog.
Oh, bless.
But he was lovely. He was certainly, in terms of when you do time and trials to criterion, he took the longest time and the most number of repetitions for him to understand the meaning of a word than any other dog I've trained. You know, like border collies can sometimes do it in 6, horses do it in about 6. Averages about 20 to 30. Some dogs take it. He would take 200 repetitions.
Wow.
And then you'd tell him, you'd say, Claude, sit. And he'd go, I know this one. Don't tell me. Don't tell me. You know, can I call a friend? And then it would like come to him like oh, yeah. Sit. I mean, he was special. I loved him. Anyway.
Lord Rothermere, who
yes
was a chap who started Dogs Today.
I drink Perrier to this day.
Oh, bless, you remember.
Didn't his brother start Perrier, or was it he involved as well?
He was obsessed with Perrier. Well, people thought that every time there was a rumour that Lord Rothermere might come to a building, they would paint the car park and they would bring in Perrier water because they thought that was his favourite. And
I think his brother, didn't his brother bought Perrier, didn't he? At a very
I didn't
know. I think that the Rothermere connection is there. That's why it had a dog as a logo. Remember the old Perrier bottles had a little doggy logo.
I'm gonna have to look this up. But when I had my interview for the job, I discovered that Lord Rothermere had a Japanese Akita. And I remembered your story about the dog thinking about sitting. And he absolutely, totally accepted that and said that's why he loved Akitas, because any other dog would just sit, whereas an Akita would think about it first. And then if he agreed with you, would sit. And for somebody that normally people were terrified of, having a dog that, thought about things, it was very amusing to him, having a dog that had possibly more of a spine than many of the people he worked with. So he loved your story, and he loved the magazine. He used to read your articles, and it was something that instantly I had nothing in common with a media magnate billionaire, but as soon as we started talking about whether or not the dog would sit, we were on the same page. And of all the magazines, this was the only one that he really loved and cared about, because dogs to him were so important. And that's the thing, is that from what we've been talking about today, I mean, we've gone all over the world and all over species, and the connectivity between everything is extraordinary. There was one anecdote that you haven't mentioned, and it's one of my favorite ones that I always bring up. The film Up, the famous squirrel bit.
Squirrels,
that was you, wasn't it? That was you.
I mean, I did it on stage at the studio at Pixar, and I was basically doing an impression of you know, what's going into a dog's brain when he walks. And it sort of goes, oh, I can smell a McDonald's wrapper as a cat. Oh, I hate that dog that lives behind there. Oh, no, no, there's a cat. Oh, cat poo, I love squirrels, like this. But the director, Peter Doctor, I saw him on TV saying he came up with the squirrels line. And it was the thing I was proudest about the movie, but I have it on video of me doing that.
Because your name is on the credits. I stayed in the cinema until I saw your name. So you're...
Yeah, it was the very last one too, in the credits. I saw it in Emeryville, where the Pixar studio is, and nearly everyone in the cinema worked at Pixar. Everyone stayed to watch the credits, you know, with their families and what have you. But yeah, I was there to teach them facial expressions. And so they did, I did it on stage, and then they did, I was too late to change the breeds. I said, no, you've got an alpha should not be a Dobie, you know, alpha should be like a Shih Tzu or a Chihuahua, you know. I said, at least it's not all pit bulls, you know, although there were those dark shaped dogs. I was too late to change the breeds or the types. But we then filmed my dogs playing, and I pointed out, like, see the eyebrow move, this eyebrow go up. I can't do it like this. You see the dog now move his eyes, but not his face. That means he's a bit spooked by saying he's giving you whale eye, you know. And so I went through it, all the paw signals, the ear signals, and it was a really good seminar. And we filmed it. And if you get the Blu-ray edition, you can see the extras with my dogs there, and then you see it become the dogs on screen, and you see me on stage at Pixar doing the routine, you know. So anyway,
that's what happens when you get to influence. Programs become better. So that's the hope, that somebody watching this now wants to join the Waiting for Doggo collective and make these things happen, these ideas. Because I was trying to bring you over because we were going to do a reality TV, scripted reality, at the Animal Welfare Trust, where Open Paw has. And we were going to do it like the Bake Off, where you were going to be like a judge, and we were going to have a competition that was allegedly for charity, where people were teaching how to train the rescue dogs. And it was, we had so many famous people who were volunteering just to be themselves in it. And people were going to film it for nothing. But, you know, life just gets in the way. Nobody actually ever gets around to doing these things.
Just now, we can't do it now, yeah.
Yeah, but we can do it over Zoom. I mean, imagine if, because there's a really good program on telly that I don't know whether you get it over there, called Taskmaster, Task. My northern accent makes me, I can't say words like that. Taskmaster.
Taskmaster.
Taskmaster. Where a load of celebrities, a load of comedians are given tasks to do, normally in the studio or on location. But because of lockdown, they opened it up to normal people. And every week they gave a challenge. And it was much better than when the comedians did it, because the general public filmed them. And it's a much better program. And I just think we could do, like next week, we could set a challenge and get people to upload their videos of just idea. I mean, let's find the world's greatest dog trainer to train. What would be amusing and a good one to start them off on? The best method for, well, shush sounded a good one.
Clearing up his toys, putting them in the toy basket.
Yeah.
I have like reams and reams of TV treatments from like 20 years ago, when I really stretched my brain and came up with like games for dogs to play, how we could gamify it now with split screen. So people do it in a prescribed playing field, say a 10 by 10 living room or a 49-foot long recall, and they film their dog doing it. And then they go in the pot. They don't know who they're going to compete against, but the winner goes through. But we don't know who wins till we show the split screen of the two dogs racing. First dog to come and sit across the line. And I think it would be, a good concept. And I thought up loads and loads of games. But again, it just never got takers. So we did it ourselves. We did, I mean, on Dogstar Daily, what did we do? America's Dog Trainer. So every episode's a different dog trainer. Then we did World's Dog Trainer.
Mm-hmm.
And then we did a video pantomime competition called Summer Fun. We did it all ourselves. That's just Jamie, myself, and Kelly. But it was a lot of work. We got us doing it because we're not really tech people, but we did it. And it's still up there when you look on Dogstar Daily, our old website. It still lives. Occasionally, I think we have a little Facebook feed on there to keep it fresh. But the whole Summer Fun videos are on there. And they were hilarious.
Yes.
I mean, my favorite was the one in Mexico, which they filmed with GoPros.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's underwater, and they hire a boat to go to an island and go swimming. And it's really, what people did was there were about 6 of them, highly professional. Then we had some really dorky ones, but they were hilarious. I mean, they had me in fits looking at some of these, And that to me is how to use the web, because the most watched ones move to the top. So it's essentially like a mini YouTube that I think now that the sell by life for Facebook and YouTube is coming up because of all of the mistruths that they're spreading, and how it's not a great source of anything, but it's a wonderful concept. So what you essentially need is doggy training YouTube. Nothing to do with YouTube. It's just a website that shows dog training, or to put it a different way, because that's not selling training, because it always gets a bad rap because so many people think training's a drag. It's how to mold your dog's personality, temperament, behavior, And that's what it is. It's changing behavior, it's changing temperament, it's changing the dog's feelings, building confidence. And when they understand that, how to build your dog's confidence, see, that would sell. But it's all videos. It's all no one talking about it. This is boring. Like the two of us. I mean, I can't believe anyone's even listening out there. I wish I had, if it were a normal Zoom thing, I would have a list of how many people are still here now. They probably all died or fell asleep or something. We've been boring them for so long. How long? Oh my word! We've been doing this for 2.5 hours.
Yeah, 2.5 hours. I think you probably. Yes, you've definitely beaten the record, but we find out the figures at the end, I think. But you beat it. I think that's the thing, is people will watch it again, and possibly with in little. That's the good thing. You can pause videos these days, and that's the thing. They can just,
you see. I mean, and when you think the way the magazines have gone, or are all going one by one. No, what we need now is a video mag, but not smorty and stupid. Like do you remember before the .com bust, all those websites, dogs.com, dog.com, all this stuff. And they hired writers.
Dog Planet or something, Dog Park.
Yeah, you've got it. Yeah, I was on Dog Planet or whatever it's called. They paid me $5,000 a month to do nothing. The only thing I did for them in 3 years of being paid $5,000 a month was I went in to have my photograph taken once. They just hired writers to write words, drivel.
Yeah.
They knew the headings, barking, and they would say mindless stuff like dogs bark. They bark for a variety of reasons. Like, yes, what we want to know is how to get them to shush. How to bark less, And so when we now have our we take YouTube and we just say, forget YouTube, videos get lost there. We want doggy confidence building YouTube. For all the dogs that lack confidence or are fearful, this is how you build their confidence. Yes. Hundreds of different short videos. That is the way the web should go. So it's meaningful, educational, interesting, fun to watch information of it being done, not this talking head bullshit. Or if I see this on TV one more time, and I watch a lot of political news on TV like CNN. Why does someone who being interviewed have to be walking with a microphone? They walk, then they stand still, and then they stand still and look at the camera and deliver the lines, but they all do it. I don't want to look at your face anyway. I would rather listen to your voice and see what you're talking about. But they don't even have that. They have, they'll have a reporter out there, and what are they showing? A repetitive spool of the same video, the same 20-minute video that they bought off someone who filmed it with their camera, their iPhone, over and over and over and over. Why don't you, since you're out there talking to me, go and film what's going on? All the people walking in the streets, whatever, It drives me. Anyway.
I think we are talking about the future here. I think
we are. It's the real uses of online.
There was something that I was at a meeting where because I keep discovering there's more and more committees that organise things to do with dogs and cats. And there was a DEFRA committee, which is Department of, goodness knows. Anyway, but it's a meeting of all dog and cat people. And they were discussing, now that we're banning the sale of puppies through pet shops, what sort of campaign should be launched by the government to educate the public. And it was all about what not to do. It wasn't actually what to do. And I put my hand up and said, you've got a budget to educate the public. Why don't you find a way of helping them not make the mistake and how to buy a good dog? And they went, it's just, well, that's something you can do. Okay. Why me? Why have I got to do that? Why don't, but the moment is there for, because people want a safe space where they could go to, where they get good information, good, and it's all the way through from choosing, training, all the decisions they need to make. Because as you say, the internet is so vast and the information so variable in quality. What you need is all the good people, like you were doing at the beginning with the Association of Dog Trainers, saying let's be inclusive. We need something that brings everyone along. It says it's all the charities, all the dog trainers, all the dog groomers, everybody get together with the government, because they've got a policy at the moment of doing that, because they do animal welfare. They can't do anything else because the world's falling apart, but they can make animal welfare progress. Why not have a portal where if you want to get a dog or a cat, the government says the only place you can advertise dogs or cats or anything to do with it is through this official site. And then everything through there is like a very simple, like constitution that says, do no harm, do your best. The sort of things that everybody could agree with, the things that is important to everybody, like one thing that everybody could sign and say, we all agree that this is what we want to do. And then the other side of that portal, everybody, it's like a dog street, a cat street, everything you need in one place. But, every time I tell people that, they go, that'll never happen. But why can't it happen?
Well, you know yourself, when you said just now, getting together all the dog charities, you broached that at one point and were very successful for a large amount. But I wouldn't even think of organizing existing organizations. No, it takes one person to make a change, and all they have to do is do it. And when I look back on my life, I published a book, got ripped off, so I became a book publisher to publish my own books and then books of other trainers. I did a video, essentially got ripped off, so I became a video producer. Websites, and it's why I'm so proud of Dogstar Daily, Open Paw, Dunbar Academy, because we have done it.
Yes.
Why? We just did it. Rather than waiting for someone to do it, we just thought, we will do it. We'll put
Yeah.
up so much information here, you know, that you can't binge watch it. You literally can't. So now we have to make it more accessible. And what we realize we're doing here is this has been so successful. We're moving into a different type of budget. Like I mentioned earlier on, that Sirius, the puppy school, has always funded everything I've started. Promoting dog parks, the world's first dog park was promoted by Sirius.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the Ohlone Dog Park in Berkeley. We promoted it around the world. We paid for a booklet, how to set up a dog park in your community and how to get the community, the government to agree with you. You know, setting up APDT in about 15 different countries in the world, funded by Sirius. You know, so much was funded by Sirius. Dog Star Daily, funded by Sirius. Dunbar Academy, funded by... It's now reversed. Dunbar Academy will be funding everything at a completely different budget. So the things now I've always wanted to do, it will be a matter of me just employing a videographer, editor, saying, right, you're going to do this site.
Wow.
Because we will have the money to do it. Because what I've learned is from my son's pre-kindergarten school, if it is to be, it is up to me. If it is to be, it is up to me. All 2-letter words. And that is on my desktop here. It's influenced everything I've done. That I realized to get it done, you ultimately have to do it yourself. And we waited for probably 15 years for technology to catch up with what we wanted to do on both Dog Star Daily and Dunbar Academy. Now we are ready, man. We are ready to do lots of things we've wanted to do for years. It's totally feasible. Any one person can do it. They just decide, we're going to do this. We're going to have an equivalent of a YouTube site devoted to teaching dogs to shush on cue, period. A standalone site. And it's subscription only, because there's so many different ways to do it. You know, and giving owners what they want. And what they want is, how can I do this? They don't want to be told not to do this. And breeders don't want to be told not to do this. Breeders should be told, you do 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you can advertise your puppy on this site. Well, eventually there's the monopoly, because the general public learns of it, that this 1, 2, 3, 4 is important. So the general public will insist. The power in the world is the power of the vote. When people actually vote on something, if they are informed. And informing the public, like, why would you buy a puppy that's not house trained? You're going to get frustrated with it. And that's not fair to the puppy. Apart from the fact you're cleaning up pee and poop all the time. Why would you buy one that barks all the time and hasn't been chew toy trained, so he settles down quietly, doesn't run around, but he chews his Kong quietly, calmly? You know, when the general public knows this stuff, they will insist on it. When they buy a puppy, they will insist on it. And that will start to change things. You know, the buyer has to be in power. The same way we are now with cars. You think about it, buyers have tremendous power. And who has the big power for buying lots of models of cars? Women. They're designed for women, period, because they're the buyers in the family. You know, you don't have a family of 4 be driving a Ferrari that every dad's going to choose. You know, no, we have a sensible minivan. Anyway, enough is enough. I think it's going to change. I think it's all going to change for the better. And it's things like you're doing here. This is now. This is what we do now. We Zoom, we Facebook Live, we Zoom. It ain't the way of the future. Next time you have me back, I better be training a dog. It should be real-time training. Well, there's no point in doing it. We shouldn't talk about dog training. We should show it.
Yeah. No, I will look forward to that. And yeah, more video content and more.
But before
inspiration stuff.
we say goodbye, I would like to thank everybody who's listening. If anyone is still left live on Facebook, well done. All I can say is you have a stronger bladder than I have. Say goodbye. But before I leave, I've said thank you to all of you out there. I really would like to thank you, Beverly, that for what you have done for dogs. It's been enormous. When you took over as editor at the Gazette for the Kennel Club, it radically changed it. When you started Dogs Today, it became a different type of magazine. I like to think I had some input there when I said what you need are dog trainers, lots of them, writing the articles. There's only so much you can talk about nutrition and losing a pet and what have you. You know, once a year we bring them up again. Everything is about training. Everything is about relationship. So that was smart. And you've got a couple of really good resident dog trainers, Nicole Wild, who was there till the very end, Sarah Whitehead, really good people with lots of good advice. But most importantly, what you did to change legislation and make the world, in England at least, in the UK, I should say, a better place for dogs. You've been doing it a long, long time, not as long as I, but soon I'll be gone and you're still doing it. So in safe hands. Just remember how it has to be.
Yeah.
Dedicated little YouTube websites for how you teach the dog this, how to teach a dog to come when called, how to teach a dog to follow you, how to teach it. I would say a site for each one. So we know you're not going to get any dross and any mindless, irrelevant pop-ups. You're only going to get what you want.
How to solve.
And exactly. It's very
it's brilliant. A lovely concept.
Anyway, out we go. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Goodbye.
you so much, Ian. And yeah, I'll let you go. Yeah, wow, this is the longest ever. You hold the record now. And, how do people find it's DunbarAcademy.com? Is that
DunbarAcademy.com.
And if you mention Dogs Today somewhere, that'd be great.
Dogs Today, that's yours.
Yeah. Oh, no, I mean, I think that we're setting up a thing for if people want to access the enormous archive of stuff that has been.
That was once my brain, but as I'm losing my brain, it really is good to know. It's all archived by my son at DunbarAcademy.com.
And it's
so I can forget stuff now and never say it again. How to house train a dog? Go to Dunbar Academy. Read the book.
Oh, it's been lovely catching up with you, Ian.
Yeah, good catching up with you,
so much. Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me. Do I disconnect or do you disconnect me?
I will press the button that ends it all. But bye-bye, everybody.
Make sure you save before you. I'll just leave then. Bye.
Oh, don't worry. Bye-bye. Thanks again, Ian. Lovely to see you. Oh, here we go.